Piaget, Piaget, Piaget.
Hello, everyone. This is W, host of the High Art on the Edge page, host of 2 podcast features. The first one, PCE, which stands for Post-Concert Energy, and the one you're listening to right now is called Surprise Cast. And guess what? We have a special guest here. His name is Tim Keegan. Who is he? Let's find out. Hello, my friend. Welcome. I wanted to start off this conversation by reading a quote to you from a very famous actor. His name is John Cusack. He says this: "The maestro has passed. Brian was a raw open heart with 2 legs and an ear that heard the angels, quite literally. He was touched." He's talking about his good friend Brian Wilson. Tell us your thoughts on the passing of this legendary musician.
Yeah, I think that's very nicely put by Mr. Cusack. It's extraordinary, isn't it, when someone who's this much of a giant passes on, we realize that we've lost a piece of ourselves, really. Or at least a piece of ourselves has moved on into a different realm at the same time, because we're not sharing the same planet at the same time as one of these great masters. And I don't know, I always tend to think I should have appreciated someone more when they were alive. But I think it's difficult to do that because there's so much going on in our lives and so much art to enjoy, so much incredible creative work that we are witness to. Brian Wilson, yeah, I think he was a very special one, no doubt. An extraordinary talent and was on a level which I personally found kind of a long way away. And normally with most of my favorite artists, I would try and learn the songs and really get inside the songs. But with Brian Wilson's work, for me, it was more about just not really being able to do anything else other than just sort of listen and enjoy. I couldn't get close to understanding how it worked. I'm not that kind of musician, and few people are. I mean, I think to have his kind of combination of talents and skills, there's not many people can appreciate the work, I think, to the level that maybe they would like. So he was someone that I kind of admired from afar. Obviously, I think the connection comes from his very sort of human experience and his desire and his openness with his kind of lyrics and his emotion. And that's what I connected with about his work. I know he didn't write all of his lyrics, but he worked with collaborators to express what he wanted to say. And his best collaborators were able to do that in a fantastic way.
Thank you for your feelings and opinions on Brian Wilson. And I think that segues beautifully into my next icebreaker question. I'm going to read a few names here, Tim, and whatever comes to mind, feel free to share some adjectives, some thoughts, personal opinions. These are people you might know of. Here we go. The first one is Peter Buck.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Peter Buck. Where to start with Peter Buck? I first encountered his work in probably 1985 when I went to university. And yeah, I don't think I'd heard them before that. Fables of the Reconstruction was the current album. But I bought Chronic Town very early on. And So I was listening to Chronic Town and Fables of the Reconstruction, and they came to town. They came to London, and I was part of a group of students who enjoyed alternative music, and we used to put on very small shows in the basement of our university students' union, and we used to organise trips out using the university minibus to go and see shows. And one of the first shows we went to see was REM at the Hammersmith, the Hammersmith Palais, which no longer exists, unfortunately. Kind of a club-sized venue in West London. And the opening act was the Jazz Butcher, possibly another name that might come up in our conversation. And yeah, it still rates as one of the best gigs of my life. Certainly a massive turning point for me. And the first time I saw Peter Buck in the flesh, didn't meet him that night. Didn't meet him, in fact, until 6 years later when I'd made my way down from New York, where I got over to play with my band at the time, Railroad Earth, my first band, my university band. And yeah, we rented a car and drove 21 hours from New York to Athens, Georgia. And because someone we'd met in New York had said, I can get you a gig at the 40 Watt if you can get there. So we rented a car. There were 7 of us in the party. We all piled into the car and we drove 21 hours non-stop to Athens, Georgia. And in fact, we all crashed at Jefferson Holt's house, and he was REM's manager at the time. Very hospitable chap. And yeah, we got to play at the 40 Watt. All of REM came, including Peter, so I met him there. And Michael Stipe was producing, I can't remember if it was Little or West of Rome, but it was one of the first 2 Vic Chestnut albums. And he was dropping by the house. And we were big REM fans. I mean, I was a big REM fan. By this time, I, digested all of their stuff. And yeah, Peter Buck he's an extraordinary musician, extraordinary person, very kind, generous person, loves to play. He's not a guitar solo guy. I'm not a guitar solo guy. I always appreciated that. I mean, but then, then I met him years later. I got to play with him with Robin Hitchcock, and he plays what sounds like pretty straightforward, jangly, picky guitar, but actually nobody else can play guitar like Peter Buck. Nobody else, sounds like him. And then years later, when I guess, was it lockdown? Maybe. When Departure Lounge, my band, went into the studio and we wrote this song that, funnily enough, I didn't know what it was, but I thought it sounded like a Wilco song. And the next morning when we listened to the playback in the studio, it kind of had a hole in it that I thought, wow, this needs Peter Buck on it, this song. This would sound amazing with Peter Buck on it also. And instead of trying to do an impersonation of Peter Buck, I decided to drop him a line and ask him if he'd like to play on it. And of course, being the wonderful chap he is, he said yes. And I mean, so we sent him over the track. He went into the studio. Scott McCoy recorded him playing on the track. He sent it back. And when I opened the track the next morning, the first thing I listened to wasn't the track with Peter on it. It was just his guitar. So I just listened to his guitar on its own. Okay. 12-string Rickenbacker. Could be no one else. And the track was called Australia. And he didn't give him any direction of what to play on it. Just said, would you play on this? And of course, by the end of it, I was in floods of tears because it was so beautiful and such a dream to have, a real musical hero of mine to play on one of my tracks. And last time, we keep in touch now, and I see him when he comes over, and went to see him play with Luke Haynes. He's coming over again to play with Luke Haynes, which is great. And he always says, if you've got anything you want me to play on, just send it over. So he's playing on the next Departure Lounge album as well. We have a track called This Is What Keeps Me Alive. And
I imagine you are a treasure trove of narratives, great stories to share. Let's do another person. Here we go. This is a gentleman that, and I say this with so much reverence, I love his guitar playing. I love that his band is not well known, but they've just emerged for their second album in so many years, over 30 years. And I had the great fortune of speaking with the wonderful, warm-hearted Ian Bickerton from Balloon. And he led me to you.
That's right. And he led me to you as well. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ian. So tell us about Ian and your friendship or anything you want to share.
Okay, well, this is another nice story of, when you stay connected to music, I don't know, making music, in love with music, whatever it is, this relationship we all have with music, for so long, you come across certain stuff that just hits you, and you don't know why. I mean, as Bob Marley famously said, when it hits you, feel no pain. But in fact, you feel something very, very powerful. But it's difficult to put your finger on why, what it is necessarily about it that's so powerful. It's just that certain people create music that just speaks to you and touches you in such a deep and profound way that you find room for those people and their music in your life. And you want to have them in your life. And you will, we all do this to a greater or lesser degree. I'm sure you do it a lot as well. Maybe more than some of us. But it's odd because it's the music you connect with usually first. But then when I've certainly found this. I know it can work. It can be the opposite issue, but generally if you meet the people who've made the music you love, then you're going to feel pretty close to those people as well. Or there's going to be some way that you connect with those people on a personal level as well. And I came across Ian's album, Gravity, the Balloon album, when it first came out. Yeah. So I bought that. I guess I must have heard it somewhere, bought it, fell deeply in love with it, never saw them play. But it was always one of those records over the years, I would just put it on. A lot. And one of only, not that many records that would get regular spins. I don't have a massive record collection, but the records I do have, I really treasure. And, I don't love hundreds and thousands of artists, but the ones that I do love, I really love. And he was one of those. And I don't know, his name just cropped up. There was no follow-up. There was never a follow-up album. I didn't know what happened, but in a way it didn't matter because I had this great album that I could listen to, and that voice, and that sort of unique voice, and kind of beautiful songs, beautiful production, and a very strong emotional sort of hit, but of the right kind, of the one that just, I don't know, just got me. So his name, I think I must have gone looking on social media one day. Where is this? I didn't really know anything about him. And I found him on social media, and there he was with a little Instagram thing. So I just sent him a note saying, just hi, glad I found you, and love your music, and thanks for it, and what you're up to. And we just developed a kind of friendship. He's one of a very small handful of people that I've made friends with on social media, via social media, and now we've met. He's come to my show. I haven't been to one of his shows yet. He hasn't done many since his new record, and we talk regularly now, and we get along great. He's a new friend. And so that's Balloon. I mean, I'd love to hear, I'd love to hear those songs in their full splendor, with the full band. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I'm optimistic.
His new album, Gas and Air, oof, so wonderful. And before we move on to the third and final friend, if you will, or someone that you appreciate, I would like to say this about Balloon, Ian's band, and performing live. No, I've not seen him perform live, but an idea just came to me. Tim Keegan, Balloon, there it is. You guys have similar voices. Yes. It's something, it's like I'm not a music critic, so forgive my language here, but there's a warm, crackling fire to it. There's a comfortness. There's a really cozy blanket that you just feel, it just feels very soothing and pleasant. Third and final person here. I noticed you had wrote down the bottom of your Bandcamp page. There's a tribute to a gentleman by the name of Pat Fish.
Yeah. Who sadly died, gosh, I don't know, 2.5 years ago maybe now. Who was one of my big mentors, I guess, in terms of as a songwriter and as a musician. I loved his music, still love his music, will continue to love his music, and him. What a fabulous guy. Yeah, left us way too soon. I did get the good fortune to spend some quality time with him, not too long before he died, but not enough. We did a show together in Paris, and we stayed together in a mutual friend's house, Jean-Michel Dufour, who helped put on the show. And yeah, we got to hang out and we got to play some songs together. And he was a big supporter of my music. And in fact, he wrote a rather beautiful review of the first Departure Lounge album, which came out under my name, Tim Keegan and Departure Lounge it was, Out of Here, which came out in 1999. And unbidden, he chose to write a review of it, which was never published, but he sent to me in sort of form of a letter. And one of my plans is to reissue the record at some point. It's never come out on vinyl, so I'm looking for a label to put that out, and we'll have his review as the liner notes to that. Pat's music, like I said, I saw him first in 85 opening for REM with Max Ida, playing guitar, and that was Scandal in Bohemia, I think, that sort of era for them. Actually, maybe not, maybe a little later. But yeah, I was a big fan. And then we actually booked them to come and play in our little basement at the university I told you about, and I opened for him then. So yeah, we've known each other since 85, and we're in touch over the years. And but he's somebody whose music I always loved, and who did his best music late on. I think his last 2 records are, for me, his finest work. Last of the Gentlemen Adventurers, and I can't remember what the last one was called. The last one. Yeah, they were great, and I sort of hold tight to that, really, because I think the true craftsmen and women of songwriting and music making, there's no reason why you have to do your best work early on. I think it's a craft and you should get better at it. And I think a lot of people do get better at it if they can survive the tumultuous highs and lows of the early career, maybe the hits and the crazy stuff and the burnout and the drugs and the booze. If you can negotiate all that, come out the other end intact, then I think you've got a fair chance of doing your best work, honing your craft. And I think Robert Forster's a great example of that. I think he's done, some fantastic work much later, this century. And his most recent albums are, fantastic, up there with his best. Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned the word craft, and we're going to move the needle of the conversation to the next groove. And now we're going to really get into your music here, Tim, and who you are as a person. The bulk of this conversation will revolve around quotes from a book written by Wilco frontman Jeff Tweedy. This is a New York Times bestseller called How to Write One Song. And here is your very first quote. So you want to be a star. It's soul crushing at any job to aspire to be something versus being driven by what you want to do. Do you want to be a star? Don't bother. You're going to lose. Even if you make it, you will lose because you are never going to be exactly what you are picturing. But what do you want to do? Want to play music in front of people? You can do that. You want to see if you can get better at playing in front of a larger group of people? You might be able to do that. I can even see someone deciding that they're going to create an outrageous persona and experiment with musical forms. Maybe it's a cliche, but you have to focus on verbs over nouns. What you want to do, not what you want to be. Okay, Tim, what are your thoughts on this? How does this relate to you at any time of your life as a musician?
Yeah, wise words, right? But I think clearly the young bucks are thinking, when we're young, with stars in our eyes, we're thinking about what we want to be, who we want to be as well. I mean, self-invention and also looking at our heroes and wanting to emulate those people, maybe. And I guess I probably had a bit of that, but actually I didn't think any of that was even remotely realistic. So I think any sort of feelings I had of wanting to be a certain way, I don't think I ever believed that I could be any of that. Even aged kind of 16, 17, listening to Simon and Garfunkel, which is, and the Beatles for Sale. The Sounds of Silence album and Beatles for Sale, for me, those two albums go together because it's the first kind of, I think that's when I realized that, oh, this is the kind of music it's the stuff that I connected with on a sort of, oh, this is the kind of direction that I'm going in as a songwriter and a musician if I'm going to do this. And I was doing it, but I was just kind of doing it because I liked, it was a fun way to pass the time, hanging out with friends, making music, making up songs, because we couldn't really play anybody else's because we weren't any good. We weren't proper musicians, so we didn't know how to play our instruments. But listening to these beautifully crafted, quite gentle, quite soft, sensitive songs made me think, oh, this is a way that you can express yourself through a medium. And not thinking that that's something I could be, but that's something I think I would get a lot out of doing. So, I mean, people who knew me back then might say differently, but I don't think I really ever thought I would be Elvis Presley or Paul Simon or even Lloyd Cole.
As you were going through this experience of discovering kind of your identity as a musician, did you feel, Tim, that you had friends in your corner, your parents, relatives, a teacher? Did you feel supported?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I felt very supported by certain friends and family members. But, I mean, I didn't really start taking it seriously until I got to university. But that's still pretty young, right? I mean, now that seems really young. And I wasn't studying music at university, I was studying languages. But then I, got a band together at university and we were doing quite well and we were opening for bigger bands who were coming through. And by the end of university, I decided to take a year out and do music, give it a go. And, that went on for, that year out turned into like 36 years or something before I got a proper job. When I trained to become a teacher, but even that didn't last. Being supported is really, really important. I have always felt supported by important people, but I've struggled a lot with sort of self-belief. I don't think I really took myself seriously for a long time. What's interesting now is I feel incredibly well supported by the people that I make music with, people who play with me, who I made this new record, Vide Grenier, with. It's the most supported I've ever felt as a songwriter and a performer. I don't know if I'm much of a performer, but certainly as a songwriter and as a song person and singer. And that really has given me sort of wings, as it were. I think I've struggled with that over the years, maybe, not having as much support as I would have liked and not as much self-belief as I would have liked. And I had a lot of drive when I was younger to be successful and I don't know, just push forward the ambition of youth in terms of doing well in the music business. But I found it difficult to combine that with the work on the craft, and the two. Some people can do both, and obviously do both really well. But I think when I was good at the networking and the sort of getting ahead, I wasn't actually that good at the craft yet. And I think I've got better at that and worse at the business stuff. But that's okay. I'd rather it were that way round.
You're a very insightful, articulate gentleman, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. We're going to, this is about process. This is what Mr. Tweedy has to say. To me, process is whatever act you engage in, whatever steps you can take, and whatever device you have at your disposal that you can use together that reliably results in the work of art. Process is the only name I know of for whatever series of contortions and mental tricks we have available to lose ourselves and when we create. It is the door to the disappearing that I've already described as my ultimate desired creative state, being able to get gone long enough for a song to appear.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's absolutely it. That's a song in itself, isn't it? There's quite a few songs in there actually, but yeah, getting gone long enough. That's the challenge. That's certainly the challenge when life hits you, when things like parenthood and jobs and stuff like that you have to negotiate and deal with and fit your creativity around. And I'm amazed that I'm still having ideas for songs most days. All right, they don't turn into fully fledged songs because I've got so many of them that I don't have the discipline or time find those to get gone long enough to turn them into finished songs. So I think that's very astute of Mr. Tweedy, nicely put. And I know exactly what he's talking about, because when you get in that state, when it starts, and for me, it's a joyous state. And actually, you're in the process of doing it and you're not thinking about anything else. You are lost, as Sister Sledge said, quite literally, lost in music. You're lost in the song. Your brain is going, you're editing, you've got your bit of paper with crossings out, you've got your guitar to pick up every now and then to see if something's coming. And it's just great. It's the most fun to be in. And then if you do make it to the end when you've actually finished your song, that's quite a buzz, as any Anyone will tell you.
Well, I don't want to be the party pooper here, but now we're going to take that buzz and energy. We're going to go on the other side. This is from chapter 3. This is called Obstacles. Okay, so let's figure out how to deal with a few of the typical tropes of self-defeating inner dialogue. I'm convinced the dreams we have for ourselves go unattained from a lack of permission more than any deficit in talent or desire. And I'm going to stress again that when I say permission, I mean the permission we withhold or give ourselves to pursue those dreams. So tell us, Tim, any obstacles that you used to face whilst a younger musician, or obstacles you're facing today?
Okay, obstacles. A lot of artists are very self-centered, and a lot of really successful artists, you hear from other people that they're absolute arseholes. And I'm sure some of them are, but actually I think, you do have a choice, don't you? You have a choice who you want to be. I always wanted to be a nice guy. I never wanted to be an arsehole. And in a way that kind of overrode anything else. I'd rather be a decent person than a really successful artist. I think that's how I always felt about it. I think I have quite a strong moral compass. I'm not to say I'm a saint or anything at all, far from it, but my own success, individual success or personal success or getting my kicks has never been, I don't know, my wife might say differently, because it's really important to me, my music, and it's still a massive part of my life. And yes, I prioritize it over other stuff, but not to the extent that I've foregone, for example, having a family or living in a certain place or in a certain way. It's complicated. But yeah, my main motivations, I wanted to write songs. Of course I wanted to be successful, but I always just wanted to be able to make a living out of playing music. At the time, that didn't seem too much to ask. Now it seems like a massive amount to ask. So me, just because it's so hard to make a living in music these days, unless you're, operating at quite a high level. Us indie guys, it's a lot more difficult for us than it used to be. You could press up 1,000 CDs and that's okay. If you did that every year or two and toured and get a couple of things on TV or songs in movies, then, you could make a living. Now I think that's really much harder.
I've heard that from other artists. They almost the exact same thing, particularly the movie soundtrack thing. Like, if you can get your name on one of these well-known, doesn't have to be Marvel or DC, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky enough to get a few things in films, and it's great. But yeah, and it all helps, the cash flow. But I've always had to do most of the time I've had to do other jobs on the side, and I've been okay with that. But I think I wanted to do it because I wanted to express myself, and I wanted to create. I really got a big buzz out of creating something from nothing, kind of on my own with my songwriting mate Simon Barker, and then trying to knock it into shape in the garage with my musician friends, or So I think for me it was always about doing. But I totally agree with. I think it. The doing is much more realistic, but the doing's hard too. There's always an opportunity cost for anything you do, right? There's always the thing that you could have been doing while you were doing that.
So, Tim, I just got back from a really nice hour-and-a-half workout. I did some cardio, I did some stretching, I did some weights. I'm a little tired. However, I feel really good. I feel like I've released some endorphins and can't wait to get back tomorrow. Maybe not as intense. So what I want to know, Tim, is what do you do to kind of reset, recharge, draw in energy from the universe?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, William, and one that I'm finding with increasing age is ever more pertinent because we take all that for granted, right? When we're young and our bodies recover and whatever from its daily abuses. But at this point, it is starting to become more important. And in my dream life, I'm doing yoga every day and Pilates, and I'm having plenty of time to meditate and practice a little transcendental meditation. In my actual life, I'm doing none of these things, but I really am working towards starting a new routine. It's been quite some time that I've been thinking about this, but I really think that this summer might be the time. In terms of resetting in other ways, I mean, I love playing tennis. I play tennis with my son. That's kind of the only exercise that I do regularly. But even that in the winter, that kind of falls by the wayside as well. So I'm more likely to be chopping wood. Physical work, I don't mind that. That's cool. I just I've always found it difficult to get in the habit of just doing something for the sake of it. It just feels like I want to be doing something more constructively useful, fixing my roof, or I don't know, building a shed or something.
With tennis, well, first of all, how long you been playing tennis for?
Oh, since I was a kid, not particularly well. I've never really had lessons, but I used to play with my dad, in fact, and I've played on and off over the years. I've always enjoyed it, and now, I started playing with my son a few years ago, and I used to beat him. Now he beats me, but that's good. It's the circle of life.
And it's a nice way to stay connected to your son.
Yeah, I mean, doing activities with the people you love is really important. Going for walks just gets things flowing. Conversation tends to flow. You're moving. Thoughts come. It's great for writing as well if you're on your own. I don't do enough of that either. But yeah, I guess I walk quite a bit. I'm very lucky where we live. We live near the sea, and we're also near some really beautiful countryside. So we're in between the sea and the South Downs here on the south coast of England.
Well, I imagine just the pull of the tides and the energy from that probably nurtures you in some manner.
Oh yeah, that is definitely calming, and there's kind of a reset when you go down and just sit there and stare out to sea. That's a beautiful thing to do.
It really is. It's a great place to meditate and reflect and find yourself going, wait, I'm literally just this grain of sand right here.
Sure. Yeah.
But sometimes we think we're like as big as the ocean, right?
Yeah, it's strange, but I find it very nourishing going back to places that I go, maybe not often, but going back to the same places, maybe only days later, maybe weeks, maybe months or years, you tend to take stock of things and start thinking about the last time you were there, what's happened in between, people you maybe used to come with at a certain place. Where are they now? Maybe it's the same people, but they've grown up or grown older, moved. I think it's important to take stock of that stuff as regularly as you can in life, because we can easily get lost in the cut and thrust of the daily grind.
You strike me as a very reflective person. You strike me as a very deep thinking person. Is this something you do with friends, your family, you express in these deep insights and perspectives?
Some friends, I guess. I don't know. It just tends to, I hear myself say stuff. I don't really think about it too much.
Yeah.
It tends to be, I guess, moments like this when people ask you questions, you start to think, oh, I don't know. How do I feel about that? Or how am I feeling about my life? Taking stock. Conversations are great for that, right?
Right.
And like I say, day-to-day conversations tend to be more about who's going to unload the dishwasher or, pick up the kids from school. Or there's an awful lot of practical considerations, especially when you enter parenthood, and there's just an awful lot to deal with. And I've been in that mode for the last nearly 20 years now. Yeah, pretty much 20 years. And it's been, fascinating and fantastic, and really, it's really fertile ground for songwriting, for thought, which is where, songs come from generally, even, often subconscious thought. You're not necessarily consciously thinking about the stuff that comes out onto paper or into your voice recorder when you're sitting there with your guitar, just kind of making stuff up, seeing if there's anything coming out today.
Yeah.
But it's always interesting to look back on and think, oh, I wonder where that came from. And yeah, I do find myself thinking about things a lot. I guess I am quite a reflective person.
So let's go with that before we actually start moving into your music. And one more question. One of the things I've been thinking quite a lot about recently is these seminal moments in my life, these moments that were challenging for me emotionally.
Sorry,
And
emotionally what for you?
these challenging moments
Oh, yeah.
from my past.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been trying to do is connect the dots in some manner and go back to them in my head and try to relive some of those moments that I remember caused me emotional strife. And I have found, not all of it, but I have found with some instances where it actually feels damn good because I'm much more mature. I'm more developed in the brain. I'm emotionally equipped to go back and kind of rethink some of that crap. And it's been an amazing exercise, very helpful for me. So I want to know from you, are you reconnecting to your past in a manner through your music or just through conversation of things that may have been difficult for you?
Oh, yeah, I think so, definitely. I think particularly with this last record that I just completed with the Vide Grenier record,
Yeah.
it was a conscious kind of decision to go back and look at some songs which I'd finished but came from a long time ago, but that hadn't found a home and hadn't been maybe fully realized in terms of certainly not their recording, and maybe the writing wasn't quite as complete as I'd like it to be. So I went back and I visited quite a lot of old songs, and that started to take me back to the periods of time when I made up those songs. And that did get me thinking about, okay, yeah. Because, songs do come out of difficult periods for sure, and interesting periods. And so I did find myself in those places thinking about the emotional clout of some of those songs and where that came from, what was going on in my life at the time when I wrote a song like Empty Space, for example, which is one of the certainly is the oldest song on the record, in fact, and which I wrote when I was maybe 21.
Wow.
Yeah. And going through and it was about a relationship with a friend, an old friend who'd been through some very difficult, challenging times. And I'd been through some stuff, but nothing like he'd been through. But we'd come together and made music together. And he's someone I had a relationship, and I still have a relationship like that, where we talk about the important things in life. We may not talk that often, but when we do, it's really strong connection, and we take stock of things.
So you lost out again, my weary bud. I'd no longer say fair weather friend. Did you lose touch? I surely did mine when I lost hold of you. When the high wire you walked on tumbled under your weight, I was too late, just for a change, dreaming up new reasons to wake up again, while the earth moved under your nose, if you noticed.
And yeah, those relationships are really important, right? The people that we do have those conversations with, they're precious.
They are precious, and the stereotype, at least here in America, is that as men age, they find themselves losing those deeper connections, and they start kind of sequestering themselves more and more, and kind of just dropping their friends like flies, and losing that really nice touch with people. And I saw that with my father. Oh my God. The minute he retired, he just like, that's it. I'm going into hibernation.
Right.
And it ended his mind so quickly.
Yeah.
And it was hard to watch.
I'm sure. I wonder what did he know he was going to do that? Was it conscious that he just didn't have the energy or the patience for those relationships anymore?
It's a great question. In all honesty, I think he relied on my mom to provide social experiences.
Right.
And I think he was masking a lot of pain, and he didn't want to show that to friends. He never liked being the victim in that sense. And I think he just started to prefer to sit outside, smoke his cigarettes, pet his cat. He watched hours and hours of golf and read. And that was it. Occasionally we had people come over, but yeah, he just stopped playing golf with his friends, and his hip started going. I don't know. It was very quick. I guess why I'm telling you this, thank you for asking, by the way, I think it's all part of the connection or disconnection that we are, well, I shouldn't say that I have seen, particularly with my father, go through it. And I've questioned my own behavior. Like, am I disconnecting from people?
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally hear you. And I think that, there is that sort of tendency like, you make a social arrangement and then it comes around and you're like, oh God, do we really have to go and do that? I'd really like to stay in and just watch some TV or listen to some music or play my guitar on my own. But actually, I find that's often the feeling before I go. And then when I go out and I do have that experience of a social connection with friends or, it's actually really nourishing, right?
Yes.
And it's a subconscious clicking into a mode of aliveness. And in fact, this is something that I think there's a real danger in the new generation, that they kind of, there's this feeling that we're connected to people through social media and so that we perhaps feel like we don't need to get out there and go down the pub and have a beer and a chat, or drop in on a friend for a coffee and sit in the garden, but actually it's not the same thing at all. It's very different, and it's very important to have those human connections in real time and space.
But see, here's the crazy thing about this. And as an educator, we used to talk about this at our staff meetings all the time. Technology and the usage of it and staying connected as humans. This generation doesn't know anything different.
Yeah, and that's changing the way we are, right? That's changing the human experience.
Absolutely. So to them, I've heard this from many kids. Mr. Frederick, we are connecting. We don't do it your way.
So you're a teacher?
Yeah. I was a teacher for over 20 years.
Okay. So I became a teacher quite recently.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I qualified to teach foreign languages like about 4 years ago.
Look at you.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, just before the pandemic, I finally decided to try and get a proper job for the first time in my life, because I was fed up with doing odd jobs alongside music and painting people's houses and stuff like that. And I thought, screw this, I'm going to go and get a qualification. And you know, in the UK, they were offering people money to do that. And I had a German degree, so that was my qualification to go and do the studies. And I had so I had a year full time, and then with school, 2 school placements. And then I did 2 years of early careers training, working in a school, and got my qualification. Yeah.
So what age or level are you working with?
Secondary, from 11 to 16.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I do it now part-time, but I get a lot out of it. I mean, it's, you know, I don't need to tell you, it's intense, and it's stressful, and it's full on, but working with young people and being around young people all the time is just fantastic. It's just the best.
It's, you know what I used to say, and we will get to the music, I promise, but you're just a fascinating person to talk to. What I used to say is, teaching students, being around students, is a lens into my mortality. And what I mean by that, and what I meant by that, was that every day that I left that classroom, I was constantly thinking about life and death. Because, because the fragility of children, the innocence, and it just started pouring in and out of me, and it actually made me a more effective teacher. And I will give you a little advice, whether you take it or not. If you're ever feeling depleted and you need a little bit more wind in the sail, watch Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams, or I'm not kidding you, watch a war movie like Platoon or Apocalypse Now. It just pumped me up. Wasn't easy, but it just, like, because there were days I was like, God, it's like you said, it's very intense, but I love that intensity. Loved it. Yeah. You're making me miss it, damn it.
Okay, so you don't do it anymore?
No. So this is where I've turned to in terms of exercising my energy, my ability to communicate with people. It's no longer with students. It's now connecting through the screen by doing these podcasts. Okay. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah. So
all those friends I was telling you 5 minutes ago, I've lost a lot of them, but I've gained. And this feels right. You had mentioned this album, and I want to start talking about it. And I want to read a quote to you. This comes from Rick Rubin, The Creative Act of Way Being, the book I've been using nonstop. And this comes from a chapter called Essence. Here we go. All the work we do, no matter how intricate, holds an underlying essence, a core identity or fundamental structure, like a skeleton supporting flesh. Some might call it an isness. If a child draws a picture of a house, it may have a window, a roof, and a door. If you take away the window and look at the picture, it's still a house. If you take away the door, it's still a house. If you take away the roof and the outer walls and leave the window and the door, it is no longer clear whether it is still a house. In the same way, each piece of art has a unique, life-giving feature that makes it what it is. Now, he goes on and on, talks more about this, and it's a great chapter, by the way. But I do want to ask you, with regards to the new album, what's the essence you were trying to capture?
It's a really good question. I think it is about its essence is kind of it's about growth, and it's about the passage of time, growth through time, and sort of how, as we move through time, if we are, well, I mean, I think it's probably the case for everyone. It's whether you're doing it right or not. We almost you can't help but grow through time. But we don't have anybody else's experience. We can compare ourselves with other people by reading about them, learning about them, talking to them. But as a writer and songwriter, I suppose it's about looking at my growth.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds a bit strange or a bit sort of pretentious, but it's not meant to. How I've changed, how my feelings about what's important in life have changed over the years, and what's the same. Like you talk about the essence. It's like, I go back to Empty Space, which I wrote, 35 years ago or whatever it was, 40 years ago, nearly. It still feels like me. I still feel like that person. Yeah.
Well, can I read some of the lyrics for the listeners for Empty Space?
Sure.
So you lost out again, my weary, but I no longer say fair weather friend. Did you lose touch? I surely did mine when I lost hold of you. When the high wire you walked on tumbled under your weight. I love this part coming up. I was too late just for a change, dreaming up new reasons to wake up again. While the earth moved under your nose. If you notice, it sure didn't know.
Sure didn't.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sure didn't show. Thank you.
Mm.
So go ahead and give us a little bit more about this song. And did these lyrics just tend to come organically for you?
Yeah, I think those ones did, and they don't quite make sense because it's like, well, he's saying one thing and then he's going into another thing, and it's like, oh, well, you're saying that it's like this, but then it's like that. But often
that makes sense.
Well, yeah, that's it. And in some ways, I think that's why this song is interesting, because I never really quite understood what the whole thing. I knew what it was about, but
sure,
it's nice when a song isn't quite so direct, that there's room for maneuver in it, and maybe there are contradictions, and it is a little bit unclear, and that's intriguing, and that makes you want to try and solve the puzzle as a listener. And sometimes, I think this is something Jeff Tweedy, I've heard him talk about this, because I know that he works on lyrics. It's sometimes the same kind of way I do, where you've got a tune and you start working on it. You've got a chord progression, you've got a groove, but you don't quite know what the song's about yet. It's a feeling.
Yeah.
And you're trying to find it yourself. And so you're kind of improvising words, and some of them are working, some of them aren't. Sometimes you're doing that on your own in a room like this with a guitar and a bit of paper. Or sometimes you're doing it in the studio, and there's the drummer and bass player and keyboard player have already done their bits, and you're like, shit, it's time for me to. These lyrics need to kind of come into focus now, and it's always really interesting. Sometimes it's a bit stressful, but I think I didn't really know what this song was about, but I did know that there was a core of it, and this is the isness of it was this hoping that my friend finds what he's looking for in terms of a direction and a place where he belongs in terms of a path, I guess, but also me.
For you.
Yeah. You know, at the same time, two of us going in our different directions. We'd been very close, and then we drifted apart, and then we came back and got close again, and then we were drifting apart again. And it's
oh wow,
and
good.
Yeah, and it was lovely. It was one of his favorite songs, but I never told him it was about him actually until I was working on the record, and I sent him an early mix of it, and because he'd asked me about the song weirdly, and I said, "Oh, well, I'm recording that for the new album," and he said, "Oh, that's always been one of my favorites of yours." I said, "Well, funnily enough, it's about you. Did you know that?" And he said, "No." So that was cool. Yeah. And I mean, I'm gonna sort of, this is a slight leap, but since I made that record, I'm now working on a record with Departure Lounge, which is my band.
Yeah.
And that's been a long-term project as well. You know, that's been going more than 25 years now, very much off and on, but we're very much on at the moment, and we've pretty much completed a new record. Certainly there's an album worth of stuff finished now. And that is a really, really rewarding kind of environment to be working in, because that's a place where I go to make music with my friends very much as a joint creative enterprise, and the kind of the lyrical ideas and the feelings, because we don't get together that often. Whenever we do, it's all those big conversations, and all the song lyrics tend to come out of those conversations we have, which tend to be about where we're at in our lives, what's been going on, how we're feeling about things. And that's, over the years, become really, really satisfying as a sort of creative project, because the more time goes on, the more kind of substantial it becomes. And if you're reflecting those meaty life conversations in the music, and if you can do that in a way that does those conversations justice and does the subject matter justice, then I think you're really onto something, because that's what creativity is, right? It's an output which has meaning to you, and therefore, because it's real and it's important, it's going to connect with people who are listening to it.
Absolutely. And what I want to know from you is, after I read this next passage with regards to this new album, this is from Surrounding the Lightning Bolt. Rick says, an explosion of information arrives in inspired moments. Mm-hmm. How can we avoid becoming fixated on these bolts of lightning? Some artists live as storm chasers, awaiting spontaneous strikes, longing for the thrill. A more constructive strategy is to focus less on the lightning bolt and more on the spaces surrounding it. The space before, because lightning does not strike unless the right preconditions are met. So with this latest album, were there songs on here that just happen like that? That spontaneous combustion, that energy, it's like, oh my God, this just came to me in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And those tend to come when I'm in a certain, how can I put this, slightly altered state. And when I'm on my own, and yeah, some of those songs are kind of improvised, and I improvise lyrics and singing as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes very little changes between what I listen back to and I've made up into my recording machine and what ends up being on the record. A song like Self-Esteem is like that.
Okay.
I just haven't thought about it. I've just like gone, okay, we're on a roll. Let's go. What's the next one? And that's great fun, quite often there's quite a lot of stuff that isn't very good. But because I don't do it terribly often, I think there's almost a build-up of subconscious material ready to come out in one way or another. And if I can catch it at the right moment, the lightning bolt, I think, is that sort of, waiting for inspiration to strike. I think it's Willie Nelson that said, that definitely happens, but it has to catch you. Inspiration does strike, but it has to catch you working. It has to find you working,
Okay.
You have to be putting the time in.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, because some major seismic thing is going on in your life at any one time. I mean, that's the kind of obvious ones. If something really dramatic happens, the first thing a songwriter will do, you have to try to, it's difficult because you need to stay in the moment and have whatever conversations you need to have with whoever this thing is happening with. But at the same time, part of you might well be thinking, "Oh, this is a great song idea." I just got to get this down. Hang on, darling. I'll come back and we're carrying this conversation on. But I've just got to write down that, because it sparks off the songwriting part of your brain goes into overdrive and says, there's a song here, Keegan. Get it, at least get the idea down quickly. Nip into the bathroom and grab the guitar.
Self-esteem rather low. Anyone need a show? Temperature falling slow. What else do you need to know? I'll be fine. I just keep talking on the line. I live in a building on a hallway to nothing. It's like sand in my coffin, and I know what you're thinking. I'll be fine. I just keep talking to myself.
But see, this is what I love about your music and balloon music, that I feel like it's very aware. I feel like it's very present, or at least puts me in the present. It puts me in that self-awareness mode. It has that acoustic flavor to it that encourages the listener to kind of stop and pause a little bit, decompress, and kind of take in your thoughts. Whether you're consciously doing that or not, don't know. I'm just telling you the effect.
That's really great. That's lovely to hear. No, it's not my intention at all.
Okay.
But actually, it does make sense to me, because I'm not, I'm not David Bowie, and I'm not sort of giving you some sort of great art, I don't think, in terms of some sort of like major work of art. I'm giving you my thoughts on a particular matter or something, and it's like a little invitation into my way of seeing the world, or my experience of an experience that I've gone through, or day I've spent, for example, like Peculiar Day, which is some people have responded to really nicely on the album.
Right.
And I like that one because it's literally a document of a day, and everything in the song is true. I wrote the song at the end of the day, that day in 2000. It was October 2003. I know, and the song has helped me remember that day, which I wouldn't have done otherwise. It was not that remarkable in some ways, but I think it's really nice, and it's nice what was, it's giving you, it's welcoming you into my thoughts, what's going on in my head as I'm going through this day. And
couple of songs. He's wondering if I might take a ride on one. We go down to the studio.
Well, we're right there with you. And what I was going to say about your lyrics, there's really nice imagery. For example, I like this part. Lick papers, roll tape, and away we go. Singing one for my baby and one for the road. Now, when you go and work with somebody else, that's a way to start to feel good about yourself. That's okay. It's a peculiar day. It's all right. He's your friend. It's a peculiar day. So, Tweedy talks a great deal about figurative language in his book. And as an educator, I used to talk ad nauseum about how to apply figurative language to their students' writing. And metaphors, similes, personification, onomatopoeias, all that stuff. Is that something that is conscious for you?
No.
Do you not care? Do you care?
Oh, I definitely care,
Okay.
but I don't know anything about those things, really.
Okay.
I don't know anything about writing theory. I mean, no, I listen to Bob Dylan.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, like everybody else, you know. I mean,
that's a good teacher.
yeah, but I don't. It's a really good. It's a good question because I care a lot about the way the words are put together and the way they sound and the way they just kind of work. And I consider myself to be, well, it's very important for me that there's not a word wrong. Unfortunately, lots of wrong words have slipped out into songs that I've recorded on records and that still make me cross many years later that it's an and instead of an or something, you know. So I do get very anal about that stuff. And I'm a words guy.
Okay.
I listen to the words before I listen to any sort of musical. Well, I don't know if that's entirely true. No, it mustn't drive me away. The music mustn't drive me away. But if it's the voice and the words that will keep me there.
Got it. Is there anything else you want to share about this album?
Well, I guess only that, you know, I talked about there's a lot of songs from the past, and they're sort of dotted through the years from about 88 right through to 2023, I think, was the most recent one. And I mean, I think Jarvis Cocker said that the oldest one on the new Pulp album is something like 35 years old as well. That I mean, I think it doesn't necessarily matter. It's only interesting in that I don't know. I've got lots of recent stuff that's not finished. I suppose I came up with the sort of concept of Vide Grenier, the yard sale thing of like, okay, I've got some songs in my attic. Let's dust them off and see if they still work, you know. Yeah. And then putting them together with a band that hadn't played the songs, didn't know them. I could reinvent the songs with, and also I really wanted it to be a coherent listening experience. So I worked a lot with Simon Edwards, the producer, on that, and bass player, and he helped me mold them, worked on the rhythms and the keys and some of the structures, and told me where maybe some improvements could be made. And it was a really interesting exercise, and it's got a brand new song on it, which is my favorite song on it, which is Intensive Care Unit, which I'm really, really proud of. And it's kind of like I've got it out of my system now. Now I can carry on. I can do new stuff. And this was a really interesting exercise, and people like it too. So I'm very pleased with it.
I'm so happy that you said those words, proud of. It is not often that when I speak with my guests on Surprise Cast, I feel that it's hard for some of the guests to really acknowledge and be proud of the work. Maybe
Really?
they just don't share it out loud.
Right. Okay.
But I feel like with some artists, I have expressed like my appreciation and affinity for it. But for them to actually say, yeah, William, I'm actually freaking proud of what I did there. It's very difficult for them because they feel like they're being too boastful.
Sure, I understand that. Yeah, I don't want to come across as boastful. I think if you're an artist of any form, you should be proud that you've managed to complete something.
Absolutely.
And get it out in the world, because I think, we all know how hard that is, and it's definitely worthy of it. I don't think it's like, we need to blow our own horns a little bit to let people know that what we've done and that we're pleased with it. No, I think it's really important, actually, to feel good, and it does drive you forward to do the next thing as well. It's great to put.
Knowing you, Tim, and keep going back to Ian Bickerton too. You're both of you are extremely humble, and both of you seem to acknowledge, look, it's not just me making music. It's these other people that have helped collaborate with me and helped engineer something that it's a team effort, for lack of a better word, right? It's not just one person. And I don't know, there's something to be said to celebrating in that work, right?
Sorry, I lost you for a minute just there.
I was just saying that knowing who you are, you're not going to take all the credit, even though it says Tim Keegan there, right? But you know, and I know that you're going to acknowledge all the people that helped you get here.
Yeah, it's got my name on it.
Collaborative spirit.
Yes, music was never meant to be made by one person. It's a communal enterprise, and the best is work with people you love and who make you feel good. As an artist, that's really important, because artists tend to be a bit, I don't know, oversensitive and fragile, perhaps, and
can be very conceited at times, right? And self-aggrandizing and all that stuff.
Maybe, yeah, sure. So yeah, you need people who are going to bring the best out of you, and keep a lid on some of your less pleasant character traits, perhaps. But I just felt so great making this record with these people, because they're all really dear, close friends, and they make me feel great when we work together.
What else would you want, right? What else would you want? Yeah. There's a great sports broadcaster, and his father used to tell him this. And then when he said that, I used to tell my students this. And it's very simple. He'd say, win often, celebrate few. And it took a while for my little 9 and 10-year-olds to understand that. But once they understood it, it made total sense to them. So this is a very winning album. You go out and have a pint of beer, whatever you want to do. And then you're going to move on, clean that slate, and go on to the next.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I suppose there's a certain amount of humility is what you're talking about, but it's not false humility either. The joy comes from the process. The joy, I was talking to Simon about this recently, and I don't feel any great desire to go back and listen to Vide Grenier. I've listened to it a hell of a lot while we were making it. But it's like, that's done now. So we move forward, and it's the process of making it was just fantastic. Such fun. There's no, and there's no shame in that. That's awesome. Creative projects are just terrific. They give you a lot. And through my life, they've been kind of fuel to keep me sane and keep me buzzing, moving forward.
Speaking of keeping you buzzing, filling your cup of energy, all that good stuff, are there any albums or TV shows or books that you'd like to recommend, or maybe some podcasts, movies?
Gosh, I forgot about this. You did ask me to look into this, and of course I didn't. On the movies front, what springs to mind? Two of my most favorite movies are the Sideways and the Holdovers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, I'm totally serious. Yeah.
Oh, Alexander Payne's the best.
Right. Well, I love. Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of American movies. I love Wes Anderson's movies. I think he's totally awesome. I love to just sit there and look at a work of art for an hour and a half. And it's just so delightful and whimsical and beautiful, and the care that's gone into it. Very different thing, of course, from the Alexander Payne stuff. And I like a lot of English stuff. I like a lot of comedy. It's all, nothing's particularly sort of revelatory in terms of recommending it to other people, I guess. But I'm a big fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Okay. Nice.
I love Schitt's Creek. I mean, this is all American stuff, of course.
Yeah.
I've always been, heavily into American stuff and English stuff. There's a podcast which is, I don't know how well known this is in the States, but a guy called Adam Buxton, who's a lovely guy who's been at the vanguard of kind of DIY TV back in the 90s with his partner Joe Cornish. They made sort of late night TV, very silly late night TV stuff that was brilliant. And he's done comedy and acting and whatnot, but he's the last few years, maybe 10 years even, he's been doing interview-based podcasts, which are really, really worth checking out.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, they're very popular here, but when something just hits you just right, and it's like a friend talking, and he chooses really interesting people to talk to. Some of them are household names, and some of them you never have heard of, but the conversations are always interesting. And he's great. He's always interesting and funny, and he's got teenage kids, and he's married, and he recommends great stuff. So actually, I would recommend his recommendations, because he always recommends comedy and film and TV and podcast stuff at the end of his podcasts, and his recommendations are always good.
Well, from one former teacher to a current teacher, thank you for that homework.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate it. Tim Keegan, can you remind the listeners where they can check out your stuff?
Yes, you can find the Tim Keegan the Tim Keegan catalogue is mostly available on Bandcamp. The new record, Vide Grenier, is pretty much only available on Bandcamp. You can download it or buy the vinyl or the CD. The streaming platforms have the singles, and they have a couple of my older albums for the time being, but probably won't do for that long. The Departure Lounge stuff is all up on the streaming platforms at the moment. The last record came out on Violette Records. You can get the vinyl from them. And the new one, I don't know how that's going to come out yet, but watch this space. You can follow me. I'm Meek Giant on Instagram, Tim Keegan on Facebook, and make contact, and then I'll keep you in touch with my doings. But I just want to say thank you, William. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about myself for a couple of hours. It's been really nice. It's been really interesting getting your take on some of my stuff, but also getting to know you.
Those are very kind words and greatly appreciated. And a big shout out to Ian Bickerton from Balloon for connecting us. Thank you to him.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed our conversation immensely, and I'm going to leave us with one more quote, but this time we're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
Here we go. A whisper out of time. It is common for an artist to question the weight of their ideas. A 5-year-long creative process might have begun with a fleeting moment in a dream or a remark overheard in a parking lot. In hindsight, this tiny seed that led us down a winding path may seem insignificant. We might wonder if it's big enough or if the direction is important enough to keep traveling. When gathering seeds to begin our work, we may be tempted to look for a grand sign before committing ourselves. A clap of thunder to assure us that we have found the right path. My name is W, host of this podcast feature known as Surprise Cast. Thank you to Tim Keegan. And remember this, everyone. Great music is all around us. I guess you just have to keep your ears open. Ciao.
Keep these things out of your home. They're the devil's work. They are ugly and they hurt.